Good morning. I'm speaking to Hamish Dobby. He's the CEO of Hirunui District Council. And I've asked Hamish whether he would like to talk about some of the things that his council is doing, thinking ahead proactively about adaptation to climate change. Anyway, you don't need to listen to me. Hamish, good evening. Welcome. Can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Simon. As Simon said, I'm Hamish Dobby. I'm the Chief Executive at the Hirunui District Council. For those of you that don't know where the Hirunui is, we're in North Canterbury. We cover a stretch of land about 8,500 square kilometres between Kaikoura and Waimakariri. So it's a big rural district with a relatively small population of around 14,000 people. We've been on a bit of a journey for the last 5 years on coastal process and adaptation to coastal process and the impacts of climate on those coastal processes. And we've got 5 coastal communities, and we've been working with those communities to plan for what the future might hold for them and how they could potentially respond in the face of coastal hazards and what the climate may bring for them. And in particular, I'm going to talk about the Amberley Beach community. Amberley Beach is a small coastal community just a couple of k's out of Amberley. It consists of 109 properties. Amberley Beach isn't a wealthy community. The people live there because they can afford to live there. The houses aren't particularly grandiose. In fact, the smallest house there is less than 40 square metres. So, that sort of gives you a bit of a flavour of the community. And this community has been subject to coastal process for a long time now. In 1992, they built their first coastal bund with a view that there wasn't enough natural renourishment of gravel on the beach, and that was leaving them exposed to wave action. So they built a bund with a view that that was going to provide renourishment to the beach, and that changed the angle of the beach and therefore dissipated some of the wave energy. And they've continued to maintain that bund over a number of years, and council has worked with them on that bund, and that has included council rating those 109 properties in the village to fund that bund. This year, the bund's just been completely rebuilt at a cost of around $650,000, and that will be paid over time by the rate on those properties. But as part of our coastal conversations with the beach communities, we undertook a pretty structured process following the MFE guidance for how to deal with these things. We simplified it a bit because we're not complex people, and so we didn't necessarily need the full detail that MFE thought we needed. And we engaged Derek Todd from Jacobs to assist us with the science of what's going on. We went to the community, we explained the scientific view of what's going on. We then collected from the community their stories, anecdotes, photographs, etc., which helped them explain what they were seeing with those coastal processes and how those coastal processes might be changing. And we did a little bit of citizen science with putting the Coast Snap posts in so that people would take photographs and we could record changes in the shoreline, etc. And we then work with the community to say, these are the hazards. This is the likelihood of how these hazards might unfold over the next 100 years or so. And Amberley Beach has got the full suite of coastal hazards. They've got potential for wave inundation. They've got coastal erosion, which is very visible. They are subject to pluvial and fluvial flooding. They've got a coastal lagoon at each end of the town and a low-lying bit of land around the town. And they have the issue of rising groundwater as well. So they pretty much have everything that you could wish for as far as coastal hazards goes, except for maybe a cliff or something like that. And so the community have looked at those hazards and said, how can we respond? And, obviously the bund that they have is one response. It's a gravel bund. They could look for harder engineering, et cetera. They could put a bund right around the town to stop the pluvial and fluvial flooding from occurring. So there's a number of steps that they can take, but they came to the view eventually that in maybe 50 years, maybe 30 years, that they would not be able to afford to engineer their way out of the issues here. And therefore they asked us to look at what a managed retreat proposal would look like. And we called it managed retreat at that stage. We came up with a proposal to look at managed retreat, and it was based on, I guess, strengths that council had that the community didn't have, things we could do that they couldn't do individually. And it was based on meeting their needs rather than being asset focused. It was lots of councils look at coastal hazards and they talk about their assets and how they're impacted by coastal hazards and that sort of thing. We've long held the view in this council that the assets that we hold are only there to provide service to the people, and if the people aren't there, then don't worry about the assets. They're a dead loss, so just don't worry about them. So we worked out a proposal, and we've been back to the community with this, and they've largely bought into it. And the proposal was basically that council will buy a piece of land now, today, on the basis that the cheapest time to buy land is yesterday, the next best time's today, because in the future it's going to be more expensive. So council will leverage its ability to utilise debt to buy a chunk of land that can be used in the future for relocation of the village. And with the village's agreement, they'll pay for that piece of land over a period of time, which will put it 30 years. So to buy a suitable chunk of land around Amberley for them to relocate to somewhere that's high, warm and dry was around $1 million. And there's 109 properties in the village. If they paid $1 a day per property for 30 years, it's around $11,000 per property. That would give them title to a section in this new community or relocated community that we would create. 109 properties by $11,000 is more than $1 million, which is the price of the land, but there's a fair bit of holding costs on that land as well. So served as an example that it could be affordable for people, particularly these people who are of relatively modest means, to pay a rate that would purchase their place in the new property. And the maths of this is that that pays for the purchase of the land, but obviously there's a cost to subdividing the land and developing the sections. You've got to put in sewer pipes, water pipes, you've got to have a stormwater system, you need roads, presumably there'll be things like street lights and reserves, etc. Talking with local developers here, they tell me that the cost of delivering a section ready to go here is around $75,000. So if we were to develop 200 sections on this land, for example, that would cost around $15 million. And I guess you're looking at me saying, why 200 sections when there's 109 properties there? The idea is that in that scenario, there would be roughly 90 sections surplus. Sections here at a very conservative pricing sell for around $200,000. Council would have 90 spare sections to sell if it did a 200 lot subdivision, and 109 were reserved for those Amberley Beach residents, and selling 90 sections at $200,000 each generates $18 million. So $18 million fully covers the cost of the development of those lots, the servicing of those lots, and also covers any of the debt on the land that, from the interest cost that hasn't been covered by the $1 a day. So these numbers are not fictional numbers. These are real numbers. And so we showed a methodology whereby council purchased a piece of land, and by changing the zoning of that land created a value uplift. In a traditional developer model, the developer pockets that value uplift and wanders away with it. In this model, because we're doing it on behalf of this group of people, we're allowing them to utilise the value uplift to basically get their sections at a very favourable cost to them. Just the cost of the underlying land. The community have to a degree accepted this model, and council has gone ahead and purchased a piece of land to do this on. Council has advantages that individuals don't have. Council can rezone land to create that value uplift, and council can borrow money at pretty favourable rates on behalf of its residents and basically stand in place as guarantor. Council also has the ability to levy rates on people, and people will then have to pay those rates. So, we're pretty secure in our ability, if the community is absolutely dead keen on this, to make it happen. The way it will work is we'll create these 200 lots, and we'll then create a ballot for those 109 properties at the beach, assuming all 109 of them want to participate. And every property will be allocated in the ballot at random one of the sections that we create at this new subdivision that we create. And the title for that new section will be stapled to their existing title of their home at Amberley Beach. So they'll be inseparable to a point. So the property owner cannot sell one of the titles without selling the other one. And they'll be inseparable to the point where the person moves from their Amberley Beach house to the new subdivision. And at that point, their title will be extinguished on their Amberley Beach property. Indeed, it will pass to the council, and their freehold title to their new section will be no longer stapled to their property. The legal experts tell us this is all pretty doable. It's no great drama. We can have a contract that does exactly that, and it will be pretty much watertight. And we talk about this process as proactive relocation. We used to call it managed retreat, but the community became allergic to the term managed retreat when they saw what had happened in the North Island, particularly in Auckland and Hawke's Bay, with what the government described as managed retreat, when the hazards in the terms of flooding were triggered and people were without their homes, and they were questioning where they were going to go, how that was going to happen, and all the rest of it. That to us isn't managed retreat, but that's what the government branded that as, and it looked to us to be totally unmanaged retreat. So in order to get away from that perception, we call this process proactive relocation. That we're proactively creating a place where people know that they can move to in the event of a natural hazard affecting where they live. And we see significant advantages in creating that certainty for people. Number one, they're getting $200,000 worth of equity stapled to their existing title. What that effectively means is that if banks wish to no longer support mortgages in those areas, people will have significant equity in their property. So if property values decline and the banks are less supportive of the mortgages, people will be able to, the fact they have significant equity in their property, and the bank will not be able to foreclose on the mortgage unless the property value goes to zero, basically. Number two, it creates certainty for people, and a lot of the trauma that we see with natural hazards that affect people's homes, their dwellings, their places where they live, is that they're traumatized by not knowing what's going to happen, what the outcome's going to be. What we're trying to do is create certainty, and that will lessen the social trauma for these people. So we're trying to sort out the potential economic issues. We're trying to lessen the social trauma of people losing their homes by creating a pathway for them, and really just providing certainty. So that's probably the guts of how it all works. As I say, council's purchased a property. It is a 85 hectare property. It's way bigger than what we need, but we figure that there will be other issues that a bit of land will be useful in solving. And the property is a property that when we started this process, out of all the properties I looked at, it was the one property that I said this is absolutely the best location. It's elevated 20 metres up a terrace. It looks out over the sea. If you know Amberley at all, it looks out towards the Southern Alps in the west and the Teviots to the north. So it really is. It's high, it's dry, it's flat, and it really is a magnificent location that I think anybody would like to have a house in. So we've been very careful to try and find a property that's going to be really appealing, that's going to be a nice place to live. Remember, these people live at the beach. They choose to live at the beach. They get all the amenity from living at the beach. So for them to move to an existing township and a subdivision wasn't their preferred option by any stretch of the imagination. The idea that they can move as a community, stay together as a community, appealed to them. The idea that they would have a hand in the development of the rules that will govern the subdivision appealed to them. They talk about things like, well, we don't have footpaths where we are and we don't want footpaths. We want to be able to walk on the road in our bare feet. We don't have street lights where we are because street lights are annoying. We don't have curb and channel where we are. We have nice swale drains and they work really well. So those sorts of design issues for that community are important. They want to keep the feel of their community, and we want that community to be able to thrive despite what happens with their existing location. So I guess, Simon, that's a bit of a wrap up of what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we're trying to achieve. I don't know whether you've got questions or other things you'd like to explore. It's one of the things I didn't say. I mean, we're fortunate having smaller communities because you can have a much greater connection with the community. So in Amberley Beach, pretty much everyone there knows who I am. They can pick up the phone. They can talk to me. We go to either we'll hold a meeting there and invite the community, or the community will hold a meeting and invite us. So and we're really clear on the distinction between that, because a community-led meeting, they invite us to present or to ask questions or whatever, and we'll call a meeting if we've got something that we want to tell them. So it's a privilege in some ways to be able to work with a smaller community and put something like this together. It's not going to necessarily work at huge scale. It could, but it'd be a lot more difficult to work at a big scale. But you think of South Dunedin or something like that, and you think about them grappling with the issues they have there, and whether something like this could work at a scale of 10 or 20,000 homes, would be interesting.
Well, it would be a different thing. I mean, speaking to some of the people involved in the South Dunedin thing, the quote that went away with me is, "I have drunk so many cups of tea with residents," and it's the communication, which you're referring to.
Yeah.
Anyhow, thank you. Have a good day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.